I put a slide specifically dedicated to this purpose, but yeah, we'll get into later. For artists, research is really interesting, and actually I have a quote to share with you. I plan to put it on the first page of my presentation, but later on I realized that I don't really have that time. We'll talk later. Hello everybody, my name is Lavender, and my topic's about the activity-based design opportunities in the bereavement context. But before we jump into this big topic, I'm gonna slightly introduce myself. So I'm a PhD researcher in the Technical University in Eindhoven in design intelligence group. So we're concentrating on human-computer interaction and something. And I'm also a researcher in Delft Institute of Design, Positive Design. So it's very easy to memorize if you call it BioPD, very close to BioPD. So we concentrate on positive psychologies and how design can bring positive well-being to people. So it's really like we implemented a lot of positive psychology, and especially I'm very interested in relationship dissolution, as in breaking up, or death, which is a very radical relationship dissolution between people. And I also implement a lot of positive psychology, so I really look into how people can be happy. Sounds really arbitrary, but how people can have a well-being in the end of life. Okay. And I also look into resilience. Resilience is a quality that people bounce back from stressful life conditions. So this is a magical quality of people. We're gonna talk about that later. So let's get started. Ready? So the whole research deviated a little bit my PhD project. Because I read these two quotes. Under some conditions, for example, the death of a loved one, a person would be considered to be more fully functioning and ultimately to have greater well-being. Really? If he or she experienced rather than avoided the negativities of sadness. So this is actually from a positive psychologist literature. So when I read that, my first question was like, okay, another quotation. When an individual is grieving the loss of someone, death of some loved one, the period of uncertainty and adjustment are often associated with meaning-making and personal growth. So yet can be also associated with decreased subjective well-being. So people might feel negative emotions or feel sadness in their life, but they are also experiencing some positive aspects, some positive well-being. So this really sparks my question. Why should people have greater well-being when they just lose somebody they love? It even hurts to think about that. How can I be happy when I lose somebody so important to me, So based on this question, I started exploring my study. I think in an opposite way, if I'm gonna live my rest of life like this, after losing a loved one, or like this, like denying the fact of losing a loved one, denying the fact that the world left by the loved one is still worth living, am I still able to enjoy happiness and meaning in this world? So yeah, I'm gonna enjoy meaning and joy of living in a world despite the fact that I lose my loved one. So yeah, I realized that a lot of study in death and bereavement often concentrated on negative emotions, like how to reduce negative emotions and how to reduce everyday life disruption, like people are going to have insomnia, or people have a lot of disruptions in their life, and also about complicated grief. So we teach people how to survive in this kind of situation. Surviving in a very tough situation means that we just reduce the negative effect to zero and we resume our daily life function. But the thing is that we are also ignoring a greater part of our life. Like, people are still able to experience the joy and meaning of living in the world. People are still able to experience the legacy of the deceased loved one, like Avril just mentioned. And we are going to enhance social relationship. So I define it as thriving in the face of adversity. So what I really am really interested, instead of concentrating on surviving, is that I really want to enable people to thrive in this kind of situation. It doesn't mean that people or not going to experience sadness. It means that people are going to experience the sadness in a more complete way, but they're still not ignoring the possibility of having happiness in the rest of their life. Okay, so this is probably not readable, I'll just narrate it. Studying death and bereavement in HCI, human-computer interaction, could be morally disoriented and lack of thought on this in humanity development, because we're ignoring the positive side of it. And there are indeed people who are ignoring it. No, it's not in the negative way. It's that there are people, like 85% of people are able to reduce their grief level to the minimum level, but there are 15% of people who are stuck in this process. It's called complicated grief. I think everybody is very familiar with that. So these are the people that we're going to concentrate on. We're going to enable them to experience happiness again in their life. But how do we do that? Yes, how? This is how do people have greater well-being in spite of the fact of losing the loved ones. This is people's version. What if we change it into designer's version? So the change into how can interaction design contribute in facilitating a greater well-being in a bereavement context? This is going to be my research question. And then we come to the activity. Why do I come to the activity? Because interaction is activity-centered. We should concentrate on activity. But why? So imagine, everybody is using technology. I'm using computer. I'm interacting with Facebook. Technology helps us to complete tasks, like typing something or like making a call to our friends. But the actually ultimate goal is to complete an activity like socializing or like interacting with others or something like that. If I have to give you an example, if a group of people make a call to their friends, he or she is actually thinking of expressing his sadness or sharing those sadness stories to their friends. So this task can be changed by, for example, posting an article on the internet forums, because this is just a task by interacting with technology. But the real purpose is actually to express our sadness. Okay, so I define activity as a goal-directed process which can be comprised of several tasks and supported by diverse technologies. So that's why it should be activity-centered. Speaking about activities, as positive psychologists would argue that activity is also very important for our well-being, especially happiness. So 50% of our happiness is depending on genetic factors. Sorry, you're born with that. So somebody are just born happier than others. You know, somebody it also works for resilience. So somebody are born more resilient to adversity or stressful life situations. So it's genetically defined, and we cannot really change that. 10% depends on circumstances. What does it mean by circumstances? If we have a lot of money, if we have fancy cars, if we, anyway, if we have a very luxurious position or something, this is circumstances, only occupies 10% of our well-being. Other part depends on intentional activities. So intentional activities, sorry, misspelling, but anyway, means that we conducted activity that helps us to be happy. For example, we socialize with people. We concentrated on pursuing our dreams or something. These are intentional activities that actually comprises 40% of our happiness. Yeah, it's based on an American positive psychologist. So activity is so magical that it helps us. It does not only help us to cope with bereavement, it actually enhances our happiness. So that's why I started an experiment to explore how people actually conduct activities in bereavement context. Okay. The study aim is actually to identify the activity-based design opportunities in a bereavement context. So the thing is that we have to understand how people bereave, what kind of activities they are doing during their bereavement process, so that we would be able to design for that. here's a poster that displays the activities that I discovered. Yeah, so it's a little bit like easy. And then the study question is, what are the activity-based design opportunities in the bereavement context? So we started recruiting participants. Our participants are people actually experience normal grief, not very complicated grief, because we really want to understand the activities that would help, like normal grief people do, so that complicated grief people can sort of also copy that. So we got 12 participants between the age 24 to 52 from 9 nationalities who had experienced the death of loved ones. So the study actually separated in 2 phases. So the first phase is sort of sensitizing, like preparing the interviewees for the interview. So we gave them 2 booklets. One is the assignment book. So the participants have to do the assignment books for like 7 days. And during these 7 days, they were required to reflect on their experiences of losing this relationship. What are their relationships, and how these people still plays an important role in their life, and who are next to them for supporting, and what are their current life is like. And they're able to use photos. Another booklet is photo booklet, so they're able to use photos to articulate their idea. This produces 11 assignment and photo books, because one of the interviewee rejected to hand in the booklet. It's also understandable, and we respect that. So after completing the booklet, they are invited to the second phase interview. It's a 1-hour in-depth interview, asking about how they cope with the bereavement experiences, and what kind of support they receive from the social environment, and how about their general impressions of the experience of the bereavement experiences. Because we have said that we want to concentrate on the positive side of bereavement, but actually we don't really ask about, do you have learned something, or have you experienced some positive side in your bereavement? We don't ask that because we don't really want to bias our interviewees. So we were just asking, so how do you assess this kind of experience, to see if we are getting some positive answers. And the results is really interesting. Okay, we'll get there later. So the interviewer knows and took our recording, later on we process the result by transcribing and reducing the documents and bracketing them. And we also had an intercoder session for coders discussing and categorizing the themes. Yeah. So we try to analyze the positive outcomes based on 6 dimensions of psychological well-being, because this positive psychologists claim that we are going to have a greater well-being. So based on our answers, we try to understand whether there are different scopes of different aspects of positive outcomes. So 6 dimensions are personal growth, self-acceptance, purpose in life, positive relations with others, environmental mastery, and autonomy. We try to understand what the positive outcome in bereavement context would lie in these aspects. So the result produces 12 meaningful bereavement activities, and also 6 positive outcomes. And not exactly 6 positive outcomes, but yeah. So here are the 12 meaningful bereavement activities. You can see a lot of really goal-oriented activities, like organizing reminders and memorializations, like for example, organize the photos, or putting the Facebook page into memorial Facebook page or something. And the interesting thing is that we also find benefit. We also find some really opposite behaviors, like expressed emotions over here, and also suppressed emotions. And then we see a little bit interesting, like suppressing emotion is also regarded as a meaningful activity during bereavement. So this is discussed by all the 4 coders. So it's really interesting that we realize that suppressing emotion and expressing emotion regularly helps people to socialize better. So if a person is expressing emotion, like if I'm crying out loud in a conference or in a public space, it's probably not really proper. So in a public space, people tend to suppress their emotions when it's very necessary, or they don't open mind to strangers so easily. And we realize that this kind of activity has been sort of neglected, the benefit of this activity. And for example, we also discovered the importance of denial and avoidance as a buffering period for people not to be overwhelmed by the stress of losing a loved one. And we also discovered something like continuing and relocating the emotional bonds, like Abby's presentation, but it's more in an activity way. So people create rituals or their own rituals or their own ways to memorize their loved ones. Okay, so we have come to an important point. We want to understand what kind of activities would facilitate positive outcomes, and we really find links between activities and positive outcomes. So some of the activities can lead to specific positive outcomes like personal growth, self-acceptance, and some of the activities don't really lead to positive outcomes. This is also quite surprising. But the good thing is that we discovered that 10 out of 12 activities can lead to positive outcomes. So that means it's still very nice, yeah. Okay, let me think how to explain this. So, have you guys seen the yellow blocks? I have 2 yellow blocks here. It's because we don't really find any explicit answers, because we ask the questions in a relatively neutral way. So people's answers lies in these 4 blocks, like personal growth, self-acceptance, autonomy, and positive relations with others. It's also understandable that losing a loved one, coping with the bereavement, doesn't really change your personal life. It doesn't really enhance your environmental mastery, or it's actually a cause of a good bereavement process. So that's why that is why we couldn't find explicit report in these 2 blocks. And we also find no activities that can facilitate autonomy. So this still needs some discussion. So let's move into discussion. We have discovered some new activities, but also some old activities. Old activities like, of course, expressing emotions, seeking support from your other social members, continuing the emotional bond with the loved one, or doing rituals to memorize the loved one. But we also find some new activities like suppressing emotions. Another interesting activity is to conduct altruistic behavior, as in contributing to the society. It sounds really interesting that those people are usually patronized, or people think that they are vulnerable, they need to be supported, but actually contributing back to society help them to build up their confidence or build nice social relationships. So people in bereavement don't really need to be pitied, or they are not pathetic. They are able to build up their confidence by conducting altruistic behavior. So this is really interesting discovery. And also something like denial or cognitive reappraisal. And it's all supported by psychology. As in, all of this activity can, if we date it back to psychology, you can also find traces of psychological discussions in this activity, so it's a good sign. Okay. Funny, not really funny. Weird thing is that we find two activities that do not exhibit strong link to enhance psychological well-being. It doesn't mean that these 2 activities are not valuable. It just means that they don't have a strong link with enhanced psychological well-being. One is denial and avoidance, of course, because the psychologist also mentioned that people have to actively experience the sadness. So if people deny it or avoid accepting the fact, maybe it would also hinder their psychological well-being, but it still, needs verification. Another thing is organizing reminders and memorable possessions. we do not suggest that designers then don't concentrate on these activities because they probably have short-term effect. But they have to be very careful in helping or supporting this kind of particular activities. Okay. No explicit report of enhanced purpose of land and enhanced environmental mastery. And the most and second frequently. Oh, okay.
20 minutes.
Should I stop them?
No.
Okay.
Wrap as quickly as you can.
I'll quickly wrap up. Yeah. Most and second frequently outside positive outcomes is enhanced social relationship. Apparently that people are so spontaneous at helping the individuals, so they actually experience enhanced social relationships and also personal growth. These are two very outstanding positive psychological well-beings that we observe in our study. And there are three phases that we suggest designers to intervene, like before death, during the dying process, and after death. These are all very important decision-making process. And another thing is that we encounter two cases of decision to end a life. And it's also quite unique. Like, people have to make the decision to end a person or a pet's life. And this really sparks guilt and disturbances of their well-being. So we also suggest to concentrate or really look into this particular phase of bereavement process. And the conclusion is like promotion. So an integrated perspective designing for bereavement is more thoughtful and highly necessary. We believe that considering how people thrive in a stressful situation is very important and more thoughtful. Activity plays an important role for individuals' post-loss well-being. And activity-based design opportunities can support designers to contribute in facilitating individuals' greater well-being in a bereavement context. Yeah. So basically speaking, this is pretty much my presentation. Thanks for your attention. So, if you have any questions and comments, I would be highly appreciated. Yeah, please.
First of all, thanks for a beautiful presentation.
Thanks.
Great job. I wondered with your findings about there being positives in terms of social content, had you looked at work on social networks and well-being?
Yeah, that's a point. I don't really.
There's some nice work by people like Cohen, which and ideas around the principle of reciprocity, where actually helping people makes you feel good.
Oh, really? That's nice.
So helping people improves if somebody's suffering, then
But,
even helping them helps the giver's mental health and their own sense of social worth.
But I would argue that feeling good is a little bit different from grieving. I think grieving is a necessary situation when people have to experience the sadness. But they have to experience the sadness in a meaningful and profound way. That it's sort of.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of the social connection side, that not only is it good for the person who's bereaved, but it's good for the people who connect with them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it might be an interesting link for you.
Definitely, yeah, thanks.
Alan? Yeah, Alan, and what's your name?
Jacob.
Jacob? Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. In the circles in which I worked until recently in public health and health promotion, a lot of my colleagues working in palliative care, bereavement counselling, etc., still refer commonly, frequently, to Kubler-Ross's stages of growth, or death as the final
Like
stage of growth,
stages,
etc.,
right?
and similar staged modelling of the bereavement process from Colin Murray Parks. I wonder whether you have compared your findings and your conclusions to those fairly well known and hitherto widely used schemes guiding
the
the bereavement process.
it's a pity that people are still using Kubler-Ross's 5 stages and also Park's stages model, because we have come to a realization that the bereavement process is not really a stage. It's actually oscillating and dynamic process that people are oscillating between two. It's actually developed by an Utrecht professor in Utrecht University. It says that bereavement is not really going from stages, and Kubler-Ross herself also claimed that stages doesn't really have sequences, and people don't really experience complete 5 stages. So it's really like a dynamic process that people are moving back and forward between loss, emotions, and also how they reconstruct their new lives. So sometimes people can be very positive and very reassuring, like I'm going to develop my new life, but sometimes they embed themselves back to the negative emotions because they are reminded by the sadness. But this is a dynamic process that it's called dual process model. I think because I read Kubler-Ross's stages model and I wasn't really convinced by that. So I think it's a little but I do compare my work to their works, and all of these activities can find tracks back to the previous works. Sorry, did I answer your question?
I can see that you think this is an advance, yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, Lavender, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, thinking of the bereaved, how would you have designers and professionals engaging with your research findings? Do you have a way of translating your outcome into the profession that actually is making the future support technologies of HCI innovation? Have you considered that too?
It's a really practical question. I would say through publication. No, just kidding. But the thing is that it's going to be implemented through activities, but activity-centered design is not really so well discussed in SCI. I think people concentrated on interactions, like how we interact with the cell phone, but they didn't really look into the purposes. But I mentioned the purposes by activities, so maybe in the future, if it's possible, people would look at the activities first, so that the activity would be the targeting thing to design for, and it will be very easy to trace back to the positive impact, the potential impact it's going to generate on people's well-being. So it will be easier for designers or the professional practitioners to understand through this activity what kind of impact they're going to generate.
Can I? What should I? I was in the queue. So I wonder whether you thought about the performativity of design. So you talk about the positive side of people expressing their emotions more. But in areas of public engagement in politics and also disaster response, people have found that you could speak of a kind of communicative capitalism, where somehow it becomes more about the circulation of messages than the actual listening and engagement. So in a way, supporting more expression of emotions through design, design services or apps or technologies for doing that, you might actually perform a transformation into an emotional kind of capitalism, where people don't just get drawn into that, just circulating their emotions, but not undermining real friendship or real engagement with it. And a similar question, I think, could be posed around the decisions to die. That if you design services for making decisions to die, you're also performing a move towards that becoming more of a possibility. So not just a question to you, but also
Just
to
more like
everybody.
comments. But thanks for this really useful comments. I would actually consider the design component really hard to pronounce. But the thing is that for expressing emotions, it's really complicated because in psychology they also discussed psychologists used to claim that expressing more negative emotions or expressing your sadness would help you. But new psychologist doesn't really think so. So the thing is that expressing sadness and emotions would bring you back to the sad phenomenon, and actually it has a really controversial discussion. Like it doesn't really help the people, or even has a deleterious effect, on bereavement. But I mean, expressing emotion can be right in a certain context. Yeah.
Thank you for a great
Thank you.
presentation. I'm listening to this as a cultural anthropologist. So my question to you is, what role do designers give to culture in thinking about how to design technologies to help improve people's well-being when they're dealing with experiences of loss and grief? Because I noted that in your model of the 6 components of well-being, one of the dimensions was autonomy, and that strikes me as a perhaps particularly Western way of thinking of well-being. In other places and cultures, that would not necessarily be one of the most important dimensions of the sense of well-being. So my general question is, are designers thinking about how to integrate or take account of different cultural perspectives in their attempts to design for bereavement?
I think cultural perspective is definitely very important. It's also a very tough topic, because the thing is that I mainly implement like Western cultures. So I didn't really study a lot of Asian culture. So although I'm really from that culture, and I do see the differences. Like you mentioned, autonomy. This is probably not so appreciated in Asian culture. Like Asian culture values collectivism. So it still has to be studied more. But currently, because I'm presenting in a Western way, that's why the 6 dimensions is also sort of more Western perspective. But you also mentioned that how do designers position themselves in this certain situation? That's very important, because none of this activity actually require design intervention. I could have said that I just pack my photos. I don't really need designers to just design products. But for designers to intervene, I mean, for so many resources in the world, the bereaved people certainly don't really have to go alone on this journey. And if there are more helps and more opportunities, I think, because designers are really good at intervening in people's life. That I'm very confident on that. So designers should really consider contributing, especially if we are seeking for a better outcome, instead of only reducing the negative emotion to 0, because it makes a total differences if people concentrate on positive things.
Okay, with a quick response addition to that.
No, I'm sorry. It was just to continue the discussion, because I think the answer is no to your question.
We don't think that much.
I mean, this is bereavement, and digital bereavement is a startup economy that's very popular right now. But most companies, they don't make it the first year; they just die out because they all aim for the killer app, the big thing that includes everybody. So they don't pay attention to cultural diversities, and that's why there's no money in it, because people they don't like to lose autonomy.
It's also
Keep the discussion in mind and take it into the coffee break, but we'll have to move on. Thank you very much, Lavender.
thanks.
And